I hadn't seen my former spouse in 4 years. She entered the cafe as stunning as ever and unchanged. She looked at me when she sat down and told me why she had come to visit me today. I had no idea what to say. Ultimately, I never would have guessed that this would occur. Please, there may still be hope. Would you please give it another go? Her statements, implying that we still could have time, struck a profound chord with me. Really, could we make it in time? I was unsure if it would be effective to try again. But I'd always felt bad about leaving my ex-wife because I couldn't relate to her emotions. If I pushed her away right now, I knew I would regret it. All right, let's try it out together. And so, for the two of us, the clock began to run again. Kevin is my name. I'm 28 years old. Since completing my degree, I have been employed in a securities firm. University. This is a high-level finance position. At first, the strain was so intense that I believed concerning giving up repeatedly. But I couldn't stop doubting myself and wondered if this was all I was capable of. Much and inexplicably continued. I've now reached the status of ace in the company at the age of 28. After I had progressed thus far, my goals for my career keep expanding. I desire to raise my game even more and achieve elevated. I wanted to show everyone that I'm more capable than they realize. Even if I was not at work, I started to consider it. My time with Hannah, the woman I married at the age of 26, was progressively dwindling. Hannah, a stay-at-home mom, did all of the housework flawlessly, offering well-balanced dinners. She made a fantastic wife. We have been friends for over 20 years, dating back to our early school years. Her dad worked as a generous person in my life. At a nearby gym, Hannah's father used to instruct kids in martial arts. I possessed. Since I was in elementary school, I had been going there. When I was in the 3rd grade, my own father passed away. My parents had grown apart from us. Family. So after that, it was only my mother and me. Yet, because of the frequent bed rest, my mother. Shock of my father's passing. I had no family to turn to when I was younger, so I didn't know. Feel totally bewildered and unsure of what to do. That is when George, Hannah's father, stepped in to save the day. George was defeated, separating from his wife and parenting Hannah alone. He knew that perhaps it was the reason. How the recently single mother of mine would be experiencing. He gave me an explanation of this, in a kind tone. Through his calls to the insurance provider, my mother's work, and even asking them to assist with some administrative tasks with the staff at the municipal office. He also took me in and allowed me to stay at his house on a few occasions. Regards, George. Taking over, my mom was able to heal by taking it easy. Hannah no longer identified as the instructor's daughter at that point. Hannah. And I started to think of George as family. When I went to George as an adult and informed him that I was ecstatic to want to marry Hannah. Kevin, you've always been regarded as my son. I'm overjoyed that you will always be my son. Right now. I doubt I'll ever forget the look on his face when he told me this. My donor was meant to have blessed me with a blissful marriage, but I ended up separating from Hannah. I was entirely to blame. Hannah always worried about my well-being and made an effort to treasure our time spent together. Are you okay? Would you please take a break? The next time, how about we go to a spa together? Let's unwind, she would remark. When we first got married, I believed that we were kind childhood friends, but I eventually discovered Hannah's concern for me irritates me. I had such a strong desire to be successful at work that I was assuming too much from her generosity. Stop talking. You could not comprehend. For me, this is a critical moment. Please don't disturb me. I reiterated. Such items. I would not have noticed if Hannah had not appeared hurt. I hadn't really looked at Hannah in a while, because I was always being critical of her. Remarks directed to her. Hannah then told me one day, "I want to spend this weekend with you. Today is a significant day. Please leave early and return home. It's about time we had a conversation about Dad. Could I elaborate for you? Then, I'll have it. I'm going home early." I just said, "Got it," without checking to see what she meant when she said it was important. At that point, or inquiring as to George's whereabouts. I guess I had formed a negative habit of heedlessly answering Hannah's remarks. So I answered Hannah nonchalantly, as I usually did. As it happened, I neglected to keep my word and worked extra hours over the weekend. I simply wrote Hannah one message, saying, "Working late. Not in the mood for dinner." I had entirely forgotten about the pledge, so I didn't even bring it up. Usually Hannah responds immediately, but not this time. That didn't concern me either. My entire attention was on the task in hand. Hannah was gone when I got back home after midnight. A brief message and finalized divorce documentation were discovered abandoned. "I wanted more family time, but your job is your important thing," the note said. "I hope your work goes well. Kindly attend to your health." After reading it, I at last recalled my commitment to Hannah. I saw that it was my birthday when I looked at the calendar. Hannah believed that my birthday was an important day, not our anniversary or Hannah's own birthday. Although Hannah was born a month ahead of me, I don't recall ever having a birthday celebration. Hannah was going to honor a spouse whose wife's birthday he was unable to even recall. Surveying the house, Hannah's possessions were nowhere to be found. She moved everything out in one day, which surprised me. Maybe Hannah had been expecting me to break the pledge and had been progressively removing her items from the house, but I was completely unaware of this. Hannah had already left with her belongings before I realized what had happened. Hannah made no alimony requests. She must have had a difficult marriage. Hannah made no demands of me, but I think she had the right to ask for it. Rather, she departed from the house and left me a message containing words of worry. I was unable to pursue Hannah. The following day, I filed the divorce documents that I had completed. Ultimately, I was unable to hear what George intended to say, the conversation Hannah had brought up. I spoke with George on the phone about the divorce. I was too scared to confront him. I said I was sorry for not looking after Hannah. George only answered, "I understand," without seeming upset or dejected. We didn't talk again after the call ended. I instantly lost both my donor and my wife as a result of my self-centered acts. I was in pieces following the divorce. I lost all motivation, began to skip work, and ultimately quit. Since work had taken up all of my life, I was left with nothing. I made a few attempts to find employment, but I never lasted very long since I would often miss work. I'm currently barely scraping by on day labor. This is how I've been living for the past 4 years. It's my 32nd birthday. I'm waiting for Hannah at a coffee shop right now. A few days ago, Hannah gave me a call. She said, "There's someone I want you to meet." I understand that you are wondering, what is she saying, the one who handed over the divorce papers? But no, the divorce is entirely my fault. "Hannah, you did nothing wrong," I replied. "That is untrue, Mill. Could we just get together once?" "I really want you to meet this person," she said. "Do you want me to meet someone I'm acquainted with?" You know him, but also you don't. Despite not knowing what she meant, I went to meet him. I've always wanted to give Hannah my sincere apologies. This could be my last opportunity. The coffee shop's antique entrance chime tolled. Hannah and her father, George, were there as I turned to face the entryway. I waved a little to Hannah, and she approached. George was the person Mom wished for me to meet. As she mentioned, you know them, but also you don't. I was interested to discover what kind of person he would be. Hannah continued to have an exquisite appearance. It was a far cry from how exhausted I've grown over the last 4 years. Kevin, a long time has passed. It appears that you have shed some pounds. Are you occupied at work? I know. I quit my old job. What? Yes, I understand. Hannah graciously did not inquire further after learning that I had resigned from my work, as though she had an inkling as to what was going on. Miss, who is this gentleman over here? I was momentarily unable to identify the speaker. George was the only person in front of me, but even though we've known each other since we were young, there's no way he could have forgotten to address Hannah as Miss and me as this gentleman. He's not the type to purposefully say things in the incorrect way in public. That's why I couldn't figure it out. My dad, you see, he has dementia, Hannah remarked as she looked down, her eyes saddening. Dementia. About course, I had heard about it before, but I didn't really get it until then. However, I sensed that George was not quite right. His smile never left his face. Although he was constantly happy, he had a respectable demeanor in the past. He simply appears to be a cheerful old man these days, always smiling. In actuality, I had been observing that he was growing increasingly forgetful even prior to the divorce. Gradually, after the divorce, dementia symptoms started to show. Sometimes he doesn't recognize me the way he used to, Hannah said, sighing. Thus, there were indications prior to the divorce. I was unable to contain my dismay at my benefactor's transformation. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to, but work kept you extremely busy. I had assumed that we could have a casual conversation about it at a birthday party or something. Correct. We didn't have enough time to talk, which was my mistake. I'm sorry you had to move out your stuff bit by bit, didn't you? Yes, I apologize. I was unable to totally rely on you. Piece by piece, I started packing my stuff into a storage container. If you followed through on your promises, I believe I could return home. However, you didn't. After the divorce, I relocated my belongings from the storage container to a studio apartment because you seldom came home early. If only I had fulfilled my word, maybe Hannah, and I would still be a family. I felt horrible for losing something so priceless. I really apologize for those moments. I lost motivation after the divorce and left my job. Work used to seem like everything to me. Hannah, I wasn't really listening to you. Now it's all right. As a housewife, I've also been holding back and not expressing my emotions. I ought to have come to you with my demands and grievances. When we were younger, we used to say anything to each other. When did we stop communicating with one another, I wonder? The words of Hannah struck my heart. After growing up as friends, we were married to one another. Despite our long-standing friendship, nothing worked out. I shouldn't have taken communication for granted just because we were married and childhood friends. I felt a great deal of guilt and regret. Then there was an abrupt stop. Kevin and Hannah, should we head to the gym? George quickly offered. I've got some candies for you too. I've been smiling softly. Hannah was surprised and quickly told me, You see, Dad, his memory isn't always consistent. He occasionally remembers and occasionally forgets, but recently, he started recalling your name, Kevin, and a lot of our early stories. Because of his dementia, he frequently becomes irate, agrees, and has tantrums when gazing at photo albums. But he's very at ease when he thinks of you, Kevin. Oh, is that why you wanted me to meet him today? Hannah nodded at what I said. My dad's heart is deteriorating. He has made frequent trips to and from the hospital. He'll be admitted to a dementia-focused hospital when a spot opens up, but I won't be able to see him as frequently as I do now. So, why don't you speak with him with me till he checks into the hospital? While he is still able to remember, I want to let him peacefully savor his memories. Hannah had proposed suddenly, and I had run out of things to say. However, Hannah requested it, and more significantly, I wanted to do everything in my power to let George, my benefactor, comfortably relive his memories. What about Kevin and Hannah, then? Are you guys going outside to play once more? George remarked, unable to recognize Hannah and me in front of him. You two are always full of energy. However, he exuded happiness as he spoke about our early years. Please, there may still be some time left. I apologize for any inconvenience the divorce may have given you. There's nothing I can do to help him. I want to help my father now because of this. What exactly should I do? I inquired. Why don't we get together again and have this kind of tea? We might occasionally visit the gym. Dad might be pleased if we take him to elementary school because he frequently mentions that he needs to pick up Hannah and Kevin. We really weren't a nice married couple, but as children, we were closer to one another. When the three of us were spending time together, I wanted to bring those moments back. If we do that, I believe Dad will remember more. I want him to cherish his experiences. Hannah sounded quite earnest. Would I be able to pull it off? I didn't love Hannah enough. I really am a loser. I sincerely hope that I won't tarnish George's memory. Let's attempt to recall our childhood emotions. We were certainly attentive of one another. Should we give it another go? My heart was made at Hannah's words. I made the most of my time with Hannah and George for the next 6 months, until a room in a specialized dementia facility became available. George would sometimes lose his temper or become delirious, but he would always remain calm when we would open the picture album or when Hannah and I would go to the locations from our recollections. Though it didn't really matter, there were moments when he appeared to recognize us and moments when he didn't. It was sufficient for George to be able to savor his memories. Compared to when we were married, Hannah and I spoke a lot more. We chuckle now at how odd it seems that we weren't this talkative when we were married. George was admitted to a specialist dementia facility in Arizona 6 months after I began visiting George and Hannah. Due to his weak heart, the hospital located outside of our state was the only choice. Though certainly not as regularly as we used to, we could still visit him. The employees of the facility came to pick him up in their vehicle on the day of his departure. Hannah was crying, but George was smiling, not quite realizing what was happening. She screamed out, "Dad, take care," but George only grinned silently. But after he entered the vehicle and the attendant pulled down the window, George observed Hannah and me and remarked, "You two take good care of each other." He said those exact words to us right after our marriage. We were unable to determine if he recognized us or just remembered the wedding. However, Hannah and I responded as a team, "We will," just as we had at the wedding. We said our goodbyes with a wave till the George-carrying vehicle was out of sight. George was admitted to the hospital 1 month ago. There has been oscillation in his state. Next week, we're going to see George together. Hannah and I have been getting together a lot since then. Although we probably feel the same way about one another, that doesn't imply we're ready to be married again right now. We wish to avoid making the same errors twice. We don't have to get married in order to be together. We're trying to figure out how to take care of one another and stay together. We're not sure if that's as a married couple or as a couple, but Hannah looks happier today than she did when we were married. I want to prolong this joy for as long as I can.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.